The world knew him as the King of Pop, a figure who could make millions move, weep, and celebrate with a single note, a single gesture. Michael Jackson's name alone carried the weight of legend, his presence both luminous and untouchable, an icon whose music defined generations. Yet behind the glittering stage lights, the choreographed spins and the record-breaking tours, there was a private truth few ever glimpsed, a truth that only those closest to him could understand. For decades, the world saw perfection, the effortless dance, the crystal-clear voice, the eternal youth of a man who seemed beyond human frailty. But the reality was far more complex, a life marked by immense pressure, unrelenting expectation, and a vulnerability that could never be rehearsed. And now, at 72, his personal doctor, the man entrusted with his health during those final turbulent years, Dr. Conrad Murray, has finally spoken, revealing the human story behind the legend. What unfolds is not merely the tale of a superstar, but the intimate portrait of a man who gave the world everything, yet carried a hidden burden that no applause could erase. Long before the world called him the King of Pop, Michael Jackson was a boy from Gary, Indiana, born in 1958 into a large, bustling family where music flowed as naturally as conversation. From the earliest moments, it was clear that he was different, not only for the talent that seemed to surge through him effortlessly, but for the intensity with which he pursued it. The Jackson 5, formed with his older brothers, became the vehicle for a dream that could not be contained in a small Midwestern town. By the time he was a preteen, Michael had already experienced the exhilaration and strain of touring, the thrill of television appearances, and the sudden jolt of public attention that could lift a child to dizzying heights or push him toward an unsteady edge. Michael's voice, precise and soaring, captured hearts, while his presence, calm yet magnetic, drew eyes that would never look away. Each performance carried both joy and discipline. Each note required more than talent, it demanded endurance beyond his years. Motown recognized the brilliance in the boy whose movements seemed to bend reality, whose rhythm seemed encoded in his very bones, and the world began to take notice. By the late 1960s, the Jackson 5 had become a national sensation, a family of prodigies whose young star carried the hopes of their entire household. Yet behind the synchronized choreography and matching suits, there was a boy navigating an extraordinary life at the pace of someone far older. He learned early that fame could be a cage, as much as it was a crown, that public admiration was inseparable from intense scrutiny. Michael internalized a discipline that was both a gift and a weight. Perfection became not merely expected, but demanded, and the small spaces of childhood where innocence might thrive were gradually replaced by rehearsals, interviews, and expectations too heavy for any child to bear alone. In the early 70s, the Jackson 5's music topped charts across the globe, and Michael, now a teenager, began to emerge as a figure uniquely his own. His voice matured, carrying the depth of experience that belied his years, and his stage presence grew to fill arenas that once felt impossibly vast. Yet even as the applause grew louder, the boy remained intimately tied to the pressures behind the curtain, the training, the relentless schedules, the constant vigilance required to maintain a flawless image. In these private moments, between tours and recording sessions, Michael was a child and a prodigy at once, wrestling with the dissonance between public adoration and private longing. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Michael Jackson's transformation from gifted child to global superstar was undeniable. Off-stage, he carried the weight of a lifetime of expectations. On stage, he seemed invincible, a man who could leap higher, spin faster, and sing purer than anyone imagined possible. The world would see the icon, the King of Pop, whose music and movement defined generations. But only those who lived alongside him, who witnessed the long hours, the rehearsals that stretched past midnight, and the quiet moments of doubt and fear, knew the full story. The rise to superstardom, while dazzling, left scars hidden beneath the sequins and lights, a reminder that brilliance often comes with profound personal cost. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Michael Jackson was no longer simply a gifted boy from Gary, Indiana. He had become the embodiment of a global phenomenon, the King of Pop, whose name carried weight across continents, and whose presence could stop time in arenas filled with thousands of awestruck fans. His solo career was beginning to take shape, an audacious leap from the familial harmonies of the Jackson 5 to a world that demanded his singular brilliance. Every note he sang, every movement he made was dissected, celebrated and imitated, and the pressure to surpass every expectation grew heavier with each passing day. Michael was not just performing, he was constructing an identity, a carefully curated persona that the world adored, yet one that came at a cost that few could perceive. The release of the album Off the Wall in 1979 marked a pivotal moment. For the first time, Michael stood alone, unaccompanied by the protective harmony of siblings, facing both the exhilaration and isolation of solo superstardom. The album's infectious rhythms and meticulously polished vocals were only the surface of his labor. Behind the music lay countless hours of rehearsal, relentless perfectionism, and a deep, almost obsessive pursuit of excellence. Each recording session revealed his genius but also his vulnerability. Each dance step was a triumph of precision over exhaustion. He was a man who demanded everything of himself, often to the point of exhaustion, yet the world only saw the effortless smile, the smooth glides across the stage, the flawless performances that seemed impossibly natural. As fame mounted, the scrutiny became relentless. The media, hungry for stories of the boy who had become a man, often blurred the line between fact and narrative, leaving Michael to navigate a world that celebrated his talent while questioning his humanity. Interviews, photographs, and paparazzi glimpses attempted to define him, yet the reality behind the lens was far more complex. Michael's days were regimented, rehearsals stretching late into the night, choreography repeated until muscles burned, vocals pushed to the brink of perfection. Yet in quiet moments between public appearances, there was a childlike longing for normalcy, a desire to simply breathe outside the expectations of millions. The Thriller era in 1982 propelled Michael into a stratosphere few had ever reached. The album's unprecedented success cemented him as a cultural icon, but it also magnified the emotional and physical toll of fame. He navigated an endless cycle of tours, music videos, award shows, and media appearances, often working through exhaustion and stress that would have flattened most adults, let alone someone who still carried the echoes of a childhood defined by performance. Each accolade, each Grammy, each record-breaking moment brought elation, yet it also reinforced the isolation. The world adored the King of Pop, but very few glimpsed the man who remained tethered to a past of relentless expectations, who carried the weight of perfection in every note, every spin, every gesture. It was during these years that Michael's artistry truly became inseparable from his life story. His music, from the exuberant rhythms of the album Off the Wall to the groundbreaking visuals of Thriller, revealed both the brilliance and the burdens he bore. Behind every iconic moonwalk, every glittering glove was a boy and a man negotiating the boundaries between public adoration and private self, between creative freedom and the demands of superstardom. The world witnessed the phenomenon, but the emotional reality, the strain, the anxiety, the constant vigilance remained largely unseen, a hidden layer beneath the glittering surface of fame. In these years, Michael Jackson was not just creating music, he was building a legacy, a monument to genius, perseverance, and the intricate human cost of becoming a living legend. As the years pressed on, Michael Jackson's life became a delicate balance between unparalleled creative brilliance and the relentless pressures that fame exacted upon him. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the King of Pop was performing in arenas that could swallow entire cities, yet behind the flashing cameras and roaring crowds, he carried a private weight few could comprehend. His artistry demanded perfection, but perfection came at the cost of his body, his emotional stability, and the quiet rhythms of ordinary life. Every step of his choreography, every note of his voice, and every carefully choreographed gesture were meticulously honed, not just for the adoration of millions, but because he understood that any misstep could alter the narrative of his public image. Michael's health, both physical and emotional, became a quiet battleground. Years of touring, rigorous rehearsal schedules, and the physical demands of performance left him exhausted, yet his dedication never waned. The world admired the spectacle, the moonwalks, the glittering gloves, the sequined jackets, but what few witnessed was the fragility beneath the armor of celebrity. Sleep often eluded him. Pain, anxiety, and the unrelenting pressure to maintain an immaculate public persona pressed upon him relentlessly. Interviews reveal fleeting glimpses of the man behind the icon, soft-spoken, meticulous, intensely private, and profoundly human. He carried the responsibility of being not just a performer but a symbol, a living manifestation of music, dance, and hope. During this period, the role of his personal doctor became increasingly central to his life. Entrusted with his health, his schedule, and often his very well-being, the physician navigated the fine line between medical necessity and the expectations of a global superstar. Pain management, particularly from the relentless rehearsals and tours, became a constant concern. Each medication, each treatment, was both a relief and a reflection of the physical cost of extraordinary performance. For Michael, who had devoted himself to perfection from his earliest days with the Jackson 5, reliance on medical care was not merely practical, it was emotionally charged. It was a concession to the very humanity he often had to hide from the world. Despite these personal battles, Michael continued to create. Albums like Dangerous in 1991 and He Story in 1995 reflected his ceaseless drive to innovate and connect, even as he bore private struggles. The music, videos, and performances captivated audiences, yet behind every accolade was a man negotiating a complex landscape of expectation, pain, and the unending pursuit of artistic immortality. His energy, meticulous attention to detail, and emotional investment in each project exemplified both his genius and his vulnerability. He gave everything of himself to his craft, and in doing so he revealed the extraordinary human cost behind the brilliance. By the early 2000s, Michael's health and emotional resilience became even more fragile. The pressures of public scrutiny, coupled with the long-standing physical toll of performance, compounded the stress of daily life. Tours were planned, postponed, and reimagined, each one a testament to his enduring will, but also a mirror of the hidden strain he carried. The doctor, who had long been a figure of trust, now held not only the responsibility for medical care, but the intimate knowledge of a man whose brilliance had transformed the world. Michael's life was a blend of spectacle and solitude, of adoration and isolation, where the adoring eyes of millions often could not penetrate the quiet fragility of the person they celebrated. In these years, the king of pop remained at the pinnacle of global culture, yet the emotional and physical battles behind the scenes shaped every decision, every performance, every note. He was a man who had given the world music, dance, and joy beyond imagination, yet he had also carried a burden few could see: the relentless pressure to perform, to please, and to survive under the extraordinary weight of being Michael Jackson. In these years, the lines between legend and human blurred, revealing a truth that was as heartbreaking as it was illuminating, a truth that would eventually be revealed through the eyes of those closest to him, including the doctor who walked with him in the final chapter of his life. The last months of Michael Jackson's life were a fragile mixture of anticipation and strain. A man who had captivated the world now confronting the human limits that fame could never shield him from. After decades as the king of pop, an icon whose artistry transcended generations, Jackson was preparing for the comeback of a lifetime, the This Is It concert series, set to reclaim stages across London. Yet behind the choreography, the sequined jackets, and the rehearsals that dazzled millions, a quieter, more private reality was unfolding. He was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and the pressures of maintaining perfection weighed heavier than ever before. In the lead-up to these performances, Jackson's health became a private concern. In early 2009, he hired Dr. Conrad Murray as his personal cardiologist, seeking guidance and relief amid the relentless demands of rehearsals and his ongoing struggle with sleep. Murray, a licensed physician, administered the powerful anesthetic propofol to Jackson as a sleep aid, alongside other sedatives. This treatment, a deviation from conventional medical standards and unsafe for home use, became central to the final chapter of Jackson's life. On June 25, 2009, in Los Angeles, California, Murray was present as Jackson succumbed to acute propofol intoxication in conjunction with other medications. The official autopsy later ruled his death a homicide, a tragic intersection of celebrity, dependency, and medical oversight. The public knew a global superstar, the king of pop, whose performances electrified arenas, yet few could witness the vulnerability he faced in private. Murray's actions, the administration of powerful sedatives in a home environment, highlighted the invisible pressures Jackson had carried for decades. By November 2011, Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, convicted for gross negligence and extreme deviations from the standard of care. He was sentenced to the maximum of 4 years in prison, serving just under 2 due to overcrowding and good behavior. His medical licenses were suspended or revoked across California, Nevada, and Texas, though by 2023 he had established a medical institute in Trinidad and Tobago. Amid this devastation, Jackson's final days reflected not just a dependence on medical intervention, but the deep fatigue of a life spent performing at unimaginable intensity. The rehearsals, the choreography, the relentless commitment to perfection, all had left him seeking relief from a body and mind that were stretched beyond normal human endurance. Dr. Murray's presence and the circumstances of propofol administration became a public focal point, yet the emotional truth remained the quiet, heartbreaking story of a man who had given everything to his art, to his fans, and to the legacy he so carefully built. Jackson's death left a world stunned, mourning the loss of a global icon whose music, dance, and humanity had inspired countless millions. Behind the headlines and legal battles, the intimate reality was that of a human being, vulnerable, exhausted, and seeking care in ways that ultimately became fatal. This stands as a reminder of the weight of fame, the fragility behind even the most extraordinary talent, and the profound consequences when extraordinary expectations collide with human limitations. In the final act, the king of pop's vulnerability was laid bare, not on a stage but in a private room, under the gaze of someone entrusted with his care, leaving a legacy forever tinged with triumph and tragedy. By the late 2000s, Michael Jackson's life was a complex tapestry of achievement and vulnerability, a man whose genius illuminated the world, but whose personal reality remained shadowed. He was preparing for his historic comeback with the This Is It concerts, a tour that promised to reclaim the energy and magic that had defined his career for decades. Even as the world anticipated the return of the King of Pop, those closest to him knew that the pressure, the demands, and the endless cycles of sleep deprivation were exacting a tremendous toll. Behind the rehearsals and the media attention, he relied on Dr. Conrad Murray, his personal cardiologist, who monitored his health and in many ways became the steward of his fragile, overextended body. On June 25, 2009, in a Los Angeles home, the routines of preparation for the tour intersected tragically with medical intervention. Dr. Murray administered propofol, a surgical anesthetic never intended for at-home use, in an attempt to help Jackson rest. In combination with other sedatives, the administration proved fatal. The autopsy later revealed the cause: acute propofol intoxication, a homicide, revealing the precise and devastating way that medical oversight intersected with human fragility. Jackson's death at 50, a life spent in both the blinding glare of fame and the quiet solitude of private struggle, left a world stunned, mourning the loss of an icon whose impact had spanned generations. Dr. Murray's role became a focal point of public and legal scrutiny. Hired to manage Jackson's health during the grueling comeback preparation, He was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter for gross negligence and extreme deviations from standard medical care. Sentenced to 4 years in prison, he served just under 2 due to prison overcrowding, while his medical licenses were suspended or revoked across multiple states. The case illuminated the tragic intersection of celebrity trust and professional responsibility, offering a somber lens through which to view the circumstances surrounding the King of Pop's final hours. Beyond the legal narrative, the emotional weight of Jackson's passing was borne by his family, fans, and the music industry at large. For decades, he had been a figure of unparalleled influence, a performer whose voice, choreography, and artistic vision inspired millions. His death, while officially linked to preventable medical practices, also highlighted the quiet vulnerabilities behind his extraordinary gifts: the relentless drive to perform, the enduring pressure to meet the expectations of millions, and the private struggles with insomnia, anxiety, and the management of chronic pain. Even in the aftermath, the resonance of Jackson's life continues to shape global culture. His albums, tours, and artistic innovations remain benchmarks of pop excellence, while his personal story serves as a cautionary tale of fame's demands and the profound responsibility inherent in care, trust, and human connection. Dr. Murray's actions, the ensuing legal consequences, and the medical realities behind them serve as permanent reminders of how closely the extraordinary brilliance of a public figure can intertwine with private vulnerability, and how easily oversight can become catastrophe. As the King of Pop's legacy endures, there is also space to reflect on the man behind the music, the son, the father, the friend, the performer, who brought joy to millions while quietly navigating extraordinary pressures. This is not just a recounting of medical events or legal outcomes, but a meditation on the fragility that can accompany genius, the human cost of ceaseless expectation, and the way a single moment can forever alter the course of history. Michael Jackson's life, artistry, and tragic passing remain a testament to the complex interplay of talent, trust, and the human heart, leaving us both in awe of his achievements and deeply moved by the vulnerability that accompanied them. Michael Jackson's life was a symphony of brilliance and vulnerability, a story of a boy from Gary, Indiana, who became the King of Pop, whose music transcended generations, whose dance moves became language, whose voice carried the hopes and dreams of millions. Yet behind the electrifying performances, the sold-out arenas, and the unshakable public persona, there were moments of fragility, private struggles, and human need. The role of Dr. Conrad Murray on that final day in June 2009 revealed the devastating consequences of trust and responsibility, the tragic intersection of fame, dependence, and oversight. Jackson's passing was not only a loss to the music world, but a reminder that even icons, even legends, are profoundly human. His artistry endures, his influence is everlasting, and his story remains a meditation on the delicate balance between genius and vulnerability. As we reflect on the life of a man whose gift was unmatched, we are left with awe, sorrow, and gratitude for the joy he shared, and for the lessons his life and untimely death continue to teach. For more emotional stories, check out this video.